And let me see if I can write some information here. So many flyers. By the way, this is what the flyer for Even Alexander looks like. So if you got one at the desk, how to keep it out. Copy here. Okay. Our featured speaker for the evening is Dr. Nadine Rosechild Sullivan. And she is in Philadelphia right now, presently, has her practice there. And she has a PhD in sociology, a graduate certificate in women's studies. She has several bachelor's and master's degrees. And she focuses in the field of diversity studies. She's an insightful social analyst and consultant. And she's an experienced practitioner of possibility thinking, a compelling speaker, and she facilitates paradigm shifts for both individuals and communities at large. And she'll be talking about a book that she wrote tonight. It's called Turn Your Life Around, Expand Your Use of the Secret and Manifest Intentionally in Every Area of Your Life. And during the evening, Dr. Rosechild Sullivan should be giving a personal account as to how she used the law of attraction, the law of manifestation, and co-creation to turn her personal life around for greater abundance, health, creativity. And she'll explain the secret behind the secret, hopefully, that you might have heard of, the movie The Secret. And then she'll engage you in some exercises from the book to help you start your journey in manifesting your dreams and desires. So without further ado, let us welcome then Dr. Nadine Rosechild Sullivan.
In regard to the work I do as a sociologist, there are two books on the table. One is a book called I Trusted You, Fully and Honestly Speaking of Gendered Assault. I do a lot of work helping people recover from traumatic childhoods. Most of us have had trauma in some sort of way across our lives, but specifically those of us who have been sexually assaulted, and also ways to help heal our society so that we can move from being a rape-prone society to being a rape-free society. And that actually is possible. And the anthropological evidence is that there have been rape-free societies in the world. And therefore, we could also be that same thing. Since we're a thinking species and a choosing species and a manifesting species, we could change the situation that exists. So I have hypotheses of how to do that in that book as well. And then tonight, I am talking from this book, Turn Your Life Around, Expand Your Use of the Secret and Manifest Intentionally in Every Area of Your Life, as Amy pointed out. I want to say for a minute, I want to talk a little bit about my path to this book. I know that probably everyone here has read The Secret or seen the movie, or read, the work of Abraham through Esther Hicks, or many other wonderful, wonderful works on manifesting and co-creation. Myself, I came to this path about 34 years ago. And I was becoming an ordained minister at the time. I grew up Catholic. I'm one of 12 Irish Catholic children. I married a Jewish man. We became Pentecostal together. I got ordained as a Pentecostal Word of Faith preacher. Went from that to along the path many, many different times and places. I also studied Wicca, I've studied Buddhism, I've studied a range of different spiritualities, and have come to a place where I hold an interfaith perspective and have for the past 10 years or so. There was a window of time where I was very Pentecostal, but I'm no longer there. So, still ordained, but interfaith in my perspective. But the way I came to this was, and I tell this story early in the book, there's, if you double click on the icon on Amazon.com, you can read the first few pages for free because, it's available as an ebook as well as available in paperback. But if you double clicked on those pages, you would see that I start with the tale of two pregnancies. So my first child, my first pregnancy, my son died. I carried full term. I was in labor for 52 hours. I was in transition, for those of you who know what transition is, for about 12 hours, maybe a little longer. And transition is just one solid contraction with no breaks in between. And the labor essentially killed my son. And so when he was born alive, he was born looking at me. but he never inhaled. And they carried him away, went to work on him, and then came back and told me he was gone. And so, you know, my husband and I at the time, my husband of the time, at that time also, you know, we decided after that, at first I said to him, you know, we have to get pregnant right away or I'm going to get scared. You know, and I got to kick my shoes off because 20 years isn't heavy enough, so how to do it like that. Anyway, so, you know, I was like, we have to do this right away or I'm just going to get terrified. And he said, I'm already terrified. You know, I almost lost you. You hemorrhaged within an inch of your life and I did lose the baby and I just can't do this again. And so we sort of just, you know, okay, we're going to be childless. This is it. And then we had, you know, one of those situations that arise sometimes and suddenly I was pregnant. And I was terrified. I was absolutely, positively terrified. When somebody in that moment, I actually reached out to, you know, to a prayer group at that point, and somebody sent me a text on the power of the tongue, the power of manifesting through the spoken word. And I began to do it with a vengeance because it was the only thing that settled me or grounded me. It was the only thing that could keep me from that terror. The thing, for those of you who've been pregnant or for those of you that haven't, the thing about being pregnant is you can't see the baby. You know, when a baby's born, you can look at it, you can go, okay, it looks okay, or you can look and go, oh God, it doesn't look okay, but you have something, you have a visual, you have some sort of contact with whether it's okay or not. When you're pregnant, you don't. There's no natural way to know what's going on inside of you and how this child is developing. And I didn't have to just not miscarry. It wasn't like, you know, people that miscarry, and miscarriage can be very, very grievous and cause a lot of pain to people. But I didn't have to get past 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. I had to carry full term. I had to get labor again, which was terrifying. After a 52-hour labor, the idea of laboring again was like not a thrill. And I had to hear the baby cry. I had to hear the baby inhale. And so I locked into doing what this book said and did it entirely for the duration of that pregnancy, probably about 8 months of that pregnancy. And when I finally went into labor, I was only 4 days late with this baby. And when I went into labor, I was only in labor a total of 5 hours. About 2.5 of them at home going, wait, is this real? Is this, no, maybe this is more Braxton Hicks. And then about 2.5 hours in the hospital. And, you know, the baby came out so quickly that I actually, at one point, they were sort of switching me from here to there. They always do this, you know, labor room to delivery room thing. And then, you know, they're like moving you from a gurney to a table. And I sort of grabbed a nurse and said, catch it. And this doctor, you know, kind of slid over and caught the baby like a football, and she was about to fly across the room and hit the opposite wall. And I could have gone dancing afterward. We went home in less than 24 hours. You know, it was perfect. It was wonderful. She was perfect. She was wonderful. And so this was, you know, this was the beginning of my practice of this. Now, you could say, you know, that could be a totally natural outcome. You know, that you had a terrible first labor, you had a good second labor, you know, labors are very different. Labors for different, you know, that happens all the time, and absolutely that's true. I do know that this anchored me, and I do know that I have a history of other things that have happened that simply were unlikely to have happened if it weren't for using these principles. I'll tell the stories that come up as they come to mind. One of them was a time when my husband had been laid off. He was a limo driver in Atlantic City. And he was working for one of Donald Trump's casinos. He's worked for all of them. So please forgive me for forgetting which one it was that time. But they came to him, they called in all the limo drivers and they said, and this is circa 1989, 1990, somewhere around there. They came in and they said, you know, we're going to close the limo force and we're going to outsource all of the runs. You know, now being on the limo force meant he had health insurance for us, for his now you know, wife and 2 kids. Being in-house meant that, you know, they paid for the gas, they paid for the tolls. They reimbursed him for anything he put out. He had a certain meal allowance. He had access to food in the casino that, you know, that I wasn't having to buy and cook at home. So there were a lot of perks, even though they didn't pay him much per hour and most of the job was based on tips. There were still things that he just didn't want to be someone driving for an outside company, because when you drive for an outside company, you pay all the gas, you pay all the tolls. There is no health insurance and all of that. So he tells me, you know, about this meeting. And then he says, you know, we had done this a number of times together for a lot of things. And he comes to me and he says, you know, I want to believe that this has changed. And I'm thinking in my head, you know, this is Donald Trump. You know, these people eat people for breakfast. You know, this is like, there's no way. They have made a concerted corporate decision. This is going to be what it's going to be. And I'm thinking, just please go look for a job. You know, please just go look for a job. But he's like, I want to do this. I want to believe. I'm like, okay, I will do it with you. And so the two of us, you know, I came into agreement with him, and the two of us walked around for the next 2 months visualizing and speaking and locking into believing that we received, that he retained his job and that he wanted full seniority. So we just kept saying that, and we kept doing that and walking around saying that. And he got a call 2 days before the last day of work. He got a call to come in. There was a special emergency meeting, and they came. They called the limited force back in, and they said, we've decided to keep a small in-house force. You're still all laid off, but we're going to rehire like 7 of you. There was a force of about 40. We're going to rehire 7 of you. And they rehired my husband with full seniority. And so it was as if it never happened. There wasn't even a glitch in a paycheck, you know. So those kinds of things are things that I think were highly unlikely to have happened if it weren't for intentionally manifesting a different outcome. So I think that one of the things about a lot of the law of attraction books is they tend to focus simply on money. And it's, you know, it's easy to, money makes good examples. And I may, you know, I've done it myself. I've had some money examples as well. But they tend to focus not on other things. And you can use these principles to believe for health, for yourself, for your family, for those you love, for your children, for your spouse, your partner. You can use these principles in a range of ways. We could use these principles on purpose, and some people are, to manifest for the earth as a whole, to manifest for the increasing enlightenment of humankind, or to manifest for changes in the environment that we need, you know. But these principles can be used in so many ways. And one of the things that, you know, that doesn't get talked about is that, you know, quantum physics, there's a lot of talk about quantum physics and the underlying reality. But one of the things that doesn't get talked about is the problem of evil and the fact that we don't all start on a level playing field. A majority of the books are written as if, you know, everybody is middle class, probably white, probably male. You know, even though Rhonda Byrne is not male, there's still an overwhelming sort of sense of, I'm believing for something, but I already have my basic needs met, and I'm believing to become rich. You know, I'm not believing for a meal when there's no dinner and no sight of dinner anywhere. I'm believing to go from good to better. Not so much I'm believing to go from nothing to something. And you know, we really are affected, despite the reality, the underlying reality, that there is a quantum field that can be altered by what we believe. That human will and human thought and emotion, when it's dedicated toward that proposition of creating something, that it'll bring it to pass. Despite that, you know, it's like there's a collective thing going on. It's not just my life, it's not just my world. If you think of it as a giant mosaic, right? And there's just this giant painting, and it's all of humankind and all eras and ages and peoples, and here's this little tiny square that's mine. And whatever's going on, you know, in this space, in the early 21st century, and whatever's going on is affecting my little piece of the canvas. You know, Donald Trump was affecting my little piece of canvas. If somebody decides to declare a war, if somebody decides to do something, you know, all of those things affect my piece of the canvas. Things that happen to the economy affect my piece. Everything about that, we all go through things because we're part of this collective thing in which lots of stuff is going on. And what if I'm the child born in a place where genocide is happening? The daughter that I had the easy labor with, this is my second child, and I had 3. I had 3 pregnancies. I have 2 living children. that daughter went on and got a master's in Holocaust and genocide studies. You know, Daddy was Jewish. She wanted to know more about her heritage. She did a Jewish studies minor and then this master's degree. And in studying that, genocide is actually increasing around the globe. There's more people enslaved around the globe today than there ever were under race-based slavery in the Americas in the 19th century. And so, there's a lot of horror, there's a lot of harm in the world. So how do I stand here and talk about, oh, we can believe we receive, when there's actually people who are being, macheted or harmed, sold, little girls that are being kidnapped and taken and sold to, 15, 16, 17 johns a day. How do I talk about believing for my health and well-being, my for and no more, my little space in the midst of the space that is this world? And the fact is that human beings have a tremendous amount of authority. And actually, the first principle in deciding to manifest is deciding what it is you want. And it's one of the hardest pieces. I think there's sort of two hard parts to this. And the first of them is actually just deciding what it is you want. And a lot of times we don't decide, or we struggle about deciding because we believe that, God's will be done, or whatever God wills, or, maybe God has a purpose, or maybe karma, maybe this is my karma, maybe this thing going on for me, the fact that my husband's laid off and I'm struggling financially, or the fact that, that my baby dies, or, maybe this stuff is somehow serving a higher purpose, is releasing me so I can evolve further, and and that's all well and good, and maybe in some level be true, but the fact is that I could decide to go rob a liquor store right now, and nothing would stop me. And nothing is likely to stop me. But if that liquor store owner is believing for his or her safety, then the likelihood is that the law of attraction is going to send me to a different liquor store. Something. But I can decide to manifest something. If you look at what we think of as the epitome of evil, when we talk about Hitler, right? And there have been, unfortunately, many people, many men in evil situations that have been this kind of evil. And I'm not saying that one kind of genocide is bigger than another kind, but there are a number of genocidal maniacs in the history of humankind. So if we look at Hitler, he manifested. He absolutely determined an outcome. He decided what he wanted. And then he put all of his energy, all of himself into believing for that thing, and he began to magnetize and draw to him others who were equally evil and equally willing to harm other human beings, until it turned into a whole collectivity of those who were willing to do this thing, to try to commit this racial cleansing across Europe and to wipe out all Jews everywhere. And as they began to do that, and with that manifestation, they even manifested, sociologists and psychologists and whoever have studied the bystander effect, they even manifested some of that bystanderness, some of the fact that the populace was sort of willing to go, hey, I'm Gentile, they're not coming for me, I'm gonna look away, I don't see it, I'm gonna let it happen. So that whole thing is a manifestation. By the same token, we can be people of better moral caliber, and we can determine for good things to come about. And we do have a space, there is a right to believe for our families, for ourselves, for our lives, I do think that we should all have a bigger picture. I don't think we're really fully living if we're only thinking about, my life and what I want. But if we're, thinking about the earth, and we're thinking about others, and we're thinking about trying to leave a legacy of something in the earth, there's absolutely no reason not to manifest what you need to accomplish the task you're here for. If we've come here with a purpose, if we choose our lives, if we choose a set of circumstances to put us here, then we're here for a purpose. Now, a lot of people, I work with sexual assault victims, a lot of people are like, are you telling me I manifested the fact that my daddy raped me when I was 2? And I'm not. And some of the books talk like that, like everything that's happened to you, you pulled it to you some way or another. I'm not, and actually as somebody who does a lot of past life regression with people and has done a fair amount myself, because in my practice I do hypnotherapy too. But in past life regression, I personally have come to a different view of karma, and I don't theologically want to fight about karma. If you don't believe like I'm about to say, that's okay, I understand. Most people don't. But karma is usually talked about as a kind of law of retribution. I do this bad thing in this life, so now I come back in this other life and I experience that evil so that I get a clue and I stop doing that. But it's not what I see sociologically. Sociologically, the majority of children who are harmed do not grow up to harm others. However, of those who grow up to harm others, almost all of them were harmed as children in the way that they perpetrate, right? So almost every pedophile was abused by an adult as a child or an older teenager or someone, right? Was in that, and so it doesn't seem to work. As a sociologist, I'm like, this is not a good system. This is not training people not to do it. They're actually sort of internalizing it as okay. It's normalizing it to people who then become perpetrators. So that's not so good. The other thing is that so far, and I've been doing past life regression since 2007, so far, no one who's been harmed in this childhood has seen a life in which they did that kind of harm to someone else. Instead, the overwhelming majority of clients that have been harmed and who are seeing their past lives see other lives in which they've been victimized. You may know the work of Dr. He did no, not Brian Weiss, but the other guy, he did birth defects, past life regression and birth defects. It'll come to me in a minute. Anyway, he did research. He's passed now, but he was from, I think, the University of Virginia, and he did, Ian Stevenson, he did years of going where children had spontaneous past life memories, no hypnosis involved, spontaneous past life memories, and he would especially study those who had birth defects. And they had stories of, I have this weird thing on my forehead because when I died last time, I fell off the roof and my forehead got crushed right in that spot. And so that speaks to me of manifestation. If I die traumatically and my soul is imprinted with the injury, if I live through this injury and recover, then I sort of process it. But if I die with this injury, then I'm likely to manifest it in my next body because it's an unprocessed something. I'm dealing with the identity of this injury. And so, so I see a lot of manifesting, and that's how I've come to see karma. I've come to see karma as more of whatever we're imprinted with, whoever we think we are, is what we keep manifesting in new bodies, in new circumstances and situations. And when we change how we see ourselves, we change what we manifest. So getting on to the actual law of manifestation. I actually think of it less as attraction, less as magnetic attraction, and more as determination. Because there's a place where you have to decide what you want. You have to set aside concerns about the will of God or karma, and you have to say, what do I want? So there was this house, okay, there was this time, my husband and I had moved into this condo. It had 2 bedrooms, and it was very small. It was one of those places, it was nice, it was new. We were the first occupants, but they had cut off every possible square foot of space to give it to the next unit, and they didn't have any closet space for real, And the rooms were skinny and whatever. And we had a house before that, and now we're in this apartment. And so, stuff was everywhere, and we have 2 kids in there. And the UPS guy came one day, and he looked at me and went, "You used to have a house, huh?" Because it was like, it was under the couch, it was behind the couch, it was like climbing the wall, it was everywhere. And so, it was a very crowded space, and I began to use these principles to move into a different house. And at this window in time, we wanted to rent. We wanted to pay about what we were paying for the condo, So we were paying like $600. We wanted to pay about that. And we were looking at houses in our price range. And we were going around, and one time, you know, we walked in this one place, we get back to the car, and my ex says to me, he's like, where was the living room? And I said, it was right inside the door. And he said, no, that was a foyer. I mean, these houses were terrible. They were tiny. They were smaller, actually, than the apartment. So we kept the apartment longer. But finally, year after year was passing. People would call, and I was pastoring at the time. I was a homeschool mother at the time. People would call, and they'd be like, can I come over? And I'd say, I'm sorry. Yes, but I have to tell you, I want to warn you, it's really crowded, and it's really small, and I feel really bad. So, you know, like, don't judge me on this space, okay? So I would, like, go into this little rack every time somebody called. So I was always talking about what I had. I was always talking about the small space. And so I would go into prayer, I would go into meditation, I would go visualize, and I'd be like, I believe I receive a big house, I believe I receive these nice rooms, I believe I receive privacy and a yard, and, you know, more than one bathroom. There were things I was believing for. But then I'd come out of that space, and somebody would call on the phone, and I'd talk about what I had again. And so time was passing, and finally I was like, you know, Nadine, you know what you're doing, and you know you're doing it wrong. Knock it off. So the thing is that you have to decide. So I said this one day, I said, okay, I am drawing a line in the sand. I believe that I receive this other living space. It has more than one bathroom. My one kid would take so long in the bathroom when she was little. I mean, she's 2 or 3. I would actually have to pick her off the toilet, put her on the sink so you could use the toilet, and then put her back on the toilet. More than one bathroom, a bedroom for each child, you know, lots of space, whatever. So I start describing the place, and it's like, I believe I have it now. So that's the thing. You have to decide what it is you want, and then you have to make it present tense. And so then I'm like, I am not going to change from here out. I had learned this thing on a book on the power of words. Not so much visualization, but the power of words. And visualization is fabulous, but you can't visualize in your meditative space and then come out and talk about what you've got, because nothing's going to happen. You're just going to you are manifesting, but you're just, you know, the universe does not know what to do for you. You're confusing the quantum field. You have to actually choose. And so I chose that day. And within 2 weeks, the phone rings. And this homeschool mom says, my husband saw this thing on the sign at work, on the bulletin board, and call this number. It hasn't been advertised in the paper yet. So I tell my husband, and he says, I am not looking at another house. I'm done. No. So a couple days later, Patty calls back, and Patty's like, did you go see it? And I'm like, he won't go see it. She's like, put him on the phone. So I put him on the phone. So when Patty yells, and then we go. So, what is that? Right? So we get in the car, we go over there, we walk in. It is sitting on 10 acres of land. When you walk in, the entire house, the whole front of the downstairs is this enormous living room. It's got room for one of those big old screen TVs. It ends up with a couch and a love seat. You get down here, it's got a roll-top desk over here after we moved in. We've got a big, huge mahogany desk over here, 3 bookcases and a space to ride around in my chair. So it's this whole long living room with this office alcove. Behind it, the kitchen is also the full length of the downstairs with a bathroom at one end. And wrap-around windows looking out on those 10 acres of woods. You go up the stairs, nobody's ever lived in it. You go up the stairs, and when you walk into the master bedroom, the entire one wall, almost the whole wall is window, this enormous picture window. And the ceiling is like, I don't know why the guy put a smoke detector up there. When that battery went bad, it was a real, no, I mean, not here. That's the bedroom, the master bedroom. It was just like this huge, I don't know, 12, 15-foot ceiling. It was way up there, and it was slanted, kind of like this one. It was this slanted ceiling, and there's this curved wall going to the master bathroom. After we moved in, this room was large enough to hold our king-size waterbed, and a walkway on either side before our big old dressers. At the bottom of the waterbed, we were able to put another love seat, And then there was enough floor space for my 6'3" husband to lay down with his head touching the love seat and his feet touching the TV, right? This room was enormous. 2 bedrooms for the kids, both decent size, and above their bedrooms, instead of the tall ceiling, there was attic space. A shed out back, an acre of cleared land, and just completely private, but 2 and 3 minutes from great shopping. So absolutely perfect. They wanted $625 a month for it. So we moved in approximately 6 weeks after I drew a line in the sand. At that house, actually, I'd actually played with it for 6 years, and it had actually been finished. He built the house, the guy who owned it, lived down the street with his mother, and never moved out from his mother, and had built this place, and for 6 years, he would start to put it on the market, and then he'd pull it off and tinker with it some more. And then he'd put it on the market, and then he'd pull it off and mow the lawn with a lawn, and just, so we ended up living there for a long time. So there's this thing, you have to decide what it is that you want. And part of deciding what it is that you want is not just in your head. We are all spirits living in bodies. You have a spirit, right? And you have a two-way communication with spirit. You have your intuition, which I firmly believe is given to us when we have negative intuitions. I believe they're given to us in a timely manner so that we can change circumstances before they happen. If we know what we're doing and how to do it, often we can change. Or if I get an intuition about it, I've always been able to change the circumstance. But we have a spirit. So when you go to decide what it is you want, you need to listen to that communication. So you think about all the things you've read about meditating or visualizing. And you imagine sitting down and visualizing, right? So one time I'm busy doing my dissertation, and I sit down, and I was single at that moment. And I was, okay, I should want a partner. I should believe in a partner. So I sat down and I started to try to picture this partner. The things they would have, the way this person would be. I wanted to picture how this person would be. And so I'm visualizing somebody putting a key in the lock and turning it. I'm hearing the lock tumbler turn and hi honey, I'm home. And as I'm creating this, I'm doing this on purpose, daydreaming, right? Like we did as little kids when they were teaching long division and we wanted not to be there. So it's like, okay, and I'm visualizing this, and then all of a sudden the visualization begins to speak to me. And instead of me making it up, I hear the person say, can you help me carry the groceries? And some fear rises up in my solar plexus, in my abdomen. I don't want to help carry groceries. I have a dissertation to write. I can't help carry groceries. I'm trying, so Rhonda Byrne is saying, don't sleep in the middle of your bed. Sleep on one side and leave the other side empty and visualize your part. Put some pillows there. Pretend your new partner's there. So I'm visualizing that. And I get this fear again. Like 2-3 times I'm trying to do this visualization. I get this fear. It's like, oh no. What if he breaks my stuff? What if he knocks this over, knocks that over? Oh no. I'll have to clean more. No. And so I had to admit, I didn't want a partner. I wanted somebody to show up on Saturday night, take me to the movies, maybe have some fun, and go home Sunday morning. So that's what I believed in instead. So you need to listen to that space inside of you that tells you, you need to let the vision speak back to you about what it is that you want. So just for a minute, let's do that. Let's do that exercise. Just close your eyes, and we're going to count down, just simply count down a flight of stairs, just to let yourself relax a little. And decide before I start to count, decide one thing you want to try to picture. You're the little kid in grade school, not wanting to listen to them talk about long division or diagramming sentences or something. And you are going to use your imagination to daydream something that you want. And pay attention to every little flicker of emotional reaction that you get as you are visualizing this thing. So just begin, 10, just begin to close your eyes and let yourself go downstairs. 9, going down deeper and deeper to the core of your being. 8, like going down a circular stairway down into the depths of you. 7, letting your body just relax. 6, letting your breathing slow and deepen. 5, deeper and deeper. 4, letting all the thoughts of the things you have to do wait till later. 3, 2, 1. Go down one more time, another flight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And begin to see it. Pretend. I'm silent, just walk through it for 2-3 minutes as I'm quiet. Attention. Now let it change to what your gut wants. And then when you come back, remember the little flickers of feelings, letting it be two-way. You creating, and the vision speaking back to you, and you creating some more, and let the thing morph. And if you do this on a regular basis, you'll know what it is you want, what to believe for, and you'll be doing it without fighting with your own spirit. Just make mental notes of what you've seen, felt. Anytime you want, you can take yourself back into this space just by counting down a stair or going down an elevator or down the side of a hill, letting your own consciousness deepen, letting the upper conscious mind grow still, paying attention, hearing the feelings in your abdomen and your heart, just allowing yourself to hear your own spirit. It knows why you're here, what you're here to do, what to believe for, what would be the will of the universe, of God, of all that is, of Source. It knows how to help you release any sort of karmic debt, whatever that actually is. Your spirit knows how to lead and guide you and instruct you. When you have a crisis and you don't know what to do, or someone's mad at you and you need to work it out, you just close the door and go into this space, count down 2, 3 flights of stairs, and listen, and just ask a single question: what should I do? and wait in the silence. The answer will come. It'll be a feeling, like a flicker, like a red light, green light. If it feels good, that's a do it. If it feels yucky, that's don't. Somebody's mad at you, should I call them? It feels good, yes. Feels bad, no. When you come back, don't rationalize. Just hear your own intuitive wisdom. And in regard to this one thing that you went to look at, go back again and again over the next week or so. Look 2 or 3 more times. Create the visualization and listen to it. Let it morph and change and subtly refine itself until it's just right. And you know exactly how to proceed. You can ask step by step, what should I do next? And what do I do after that? Just allow yourself to tune in, to silence the upper mind and listen. Now coming back, remembering what you felt and seen as I count from 1 to 3. 1 and 2 and 3. I want to read a piece, just a little couple pages here, of something that happened. One of the reasons that I called this, that I, in the subtitle, talked about manifesting intentionally in every area of your life. This is perhaps the most important time to me. Well, there are a couple of close seconds or thirds, but this is the most important success I ever got using manifesting. And it also was based on listening to my intuition. So years and years and years, as I said, I began doing this during the pregnancy with my oldest daughter, who's now 33, so I began doing this 34 years ago. So by the time we got to 1999, she's 19 years old, I'd been doing it 20 years. So on Mother's Day 1999, for a week I had the intense, overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. Something was pending, that there was some impending doom in regard to my oldest daughter, who was then 19 years of age. All week long I had an ongoing sense that it was urgent to spend time in spirit and change something in regard to her. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was who it was about. Every available moment in that week, I made affirmations of safety over my daughter, and whenever possible, I spent time in spirit seeking a two-way communication about her well-being. I had things to do. I was in school and I went to class. I had homework. That week I only did some of it. I had the normal housework and care of my younger child, who was then 11. I put aside everything except that which I couldn't get out of, feeding the younger child. And I spent every possible minute in meditation and prayer as I kept visualizing and speaking safety and well-being over my daughter. Mother's Day night, my daughter went to a restaurant with some coworkers after work. All that day and evening, I was so distracted by my intuition that I set my other work aside and pressed into the spirit. The sense of urgency did not relent, so neither did I. That day, that night, I lay stretched out on my couch and I prayed and affirmed and visualized continually. The phone rang. Actually, I had just gotten a sense of lightness. It had been dark and heavy. Suddenly, the feeling had changed. Right before the phone rang. The phone rang. My daughter's voice, sounding scared and little, said, "Mommy, can you come get me? I kind of dented my car. There was this deer, and I kind of hit a tree." By the time I got there, a good 20 minutes or more had passed. Her car was off the road and in the woods. It was sitting on its passenger door. The ground was so disturbed that 20 minutes after it came to a halt, the dust was still rising in the headlight beams that trailed off into the dense underbrush. But my daughter was standing in the road without an apparent scratch. What I didn't know about my level-headed, hard-working 19-year-old 3.7 GPA college student was that she liked driving fast. There was a little road on the way home that was all trees. She had reached the point where she figured there wouldn't be any traffic, and so she gunned it. At the time the deer ran across the unlit, poorly paved asphalt, she had the car in excess of 110 miles per hour. She swerved a little to avoid Bambi and lost control, and the car went off the road and cut a path through the woods 6 suburban housing lots long before it began to roll. On the way to the tree that finally made it flip, it cut through wooded undergrowth. Each tire was flat, and as it skimmed the bark off tree after tree, every panel had been dented. The last tree uprooted at the base, then smashed lengthwise into roof and trunk. That's when the airbags deployed and the car began to flip. It did several smaller and one full revolution before it ended on the passenger side and came to a stop. By my daughter's description, she held the driver's door open above her with her left arm to make the interior light come on, so she could comb through the airbag dust and the remains of my Mother's Day potted gardenia to find her cell phone, then climbed up and out of the driver's door to jump off the side and call home with a little bit of battery power she happened to have remaining on her phone. A police officer led me along the stretching skid marks, saying she had been in excess of 85 miles per hour. We insisted she take the ambulance ride to the hospital to be checked out. She walked away without a scratch, except for the handful of chiropractic visits and the seatbelt bruise to her neck. A year later, on his way home from work in the morning, the neighbor kid across the street died on that same stretch of back road, directly across from where her car had lost control. Your intuition is a gift. With the running head start it is meant to give you, you can apply the principles of visualization and affirmation and change the outcome of anything under your authority. See, she was my kid. I made her at some level. I cooked her. I let her gel. I brought her to birth. I parented her. She was and is mine. And while she's now an adult with a lot of authority in a spiritual sense in her own life, I knew and I believed that I had authority and that I still have authority. I share it with her a little now, but I had, at one point, as far as I was concerned, full authority over the outcomes in her life. Your intuition, when you get that sense that there's something, you can go into that same spiritual space you went into a moment ago, and you can ask who, what, and even if you don't know everything, you can know who. There was a different night. I actually was having a prayer meeting back when I was pastoring, and the people praying with me, there was just a sense, something was going on, and one of them, as she was leaving, she said, you know, I think we were praying for your husband. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what it is. She's like, yeah, it's just something about Ron, you know. And after she left, a few minutes later, the door opened, and he came in, but he wasn't due home from work, and he was like a sheep, right? Like white, just pale. And I said, you know, and his work had called right before that, right after she left and right before he walked in. And he's shaking. I said, why are you here? And your job called, and you know, whatever. Turned out he had been limo driving through Atlantic City on a dark street, and an African-American child wearing dark clothing had darted out in front of his limo and appeared to have been hit. And so, you know, he had called for help, and the cops had shown up and whatever, and the kid had been taken off in an ambulance to the hospital, and he was, you know, just terrified, you know, and upset, and the phone call when he called work back was that the child was not run over. The child had run out and bumped into the side of the limo and fallen backwards and was completely unharmed. The feeling that we had while praying was that there was something bad trying to happen, and it didn't. The same with my daughter. So there's this two-way communication. You have a spirit. You have this intuition. But I want to move us ahead. So you decide what you want. Having decided what you want, there's this other place where it gets hard. What do you do after you believed you received, but why you still don't have it? That can be really rough. That can be a really hard thing to deal with, right? Here you are, you're going through. A lot of us, you know, 2008, 2009 was pretty hard. Okay, is that a hurry up?
No.
Okay, so we're going to take a break and we will come back for that part for what to do between when you believe you receive and when it actually manifests. Okay.